I will be using my latest digital in my Etsy shop, Gold Fantasy. Grab your gold making supplies and let's cut, paste, and create together in our journals. Hi everyone, Patty here. With this kit you'll receive 7 backgrounds, 7 planner, no date planner pages, and 2 collage pages for making ephemera, loaded with gold accents and fantasy flowers made with alcohol inks and bright colors. A kit you will have to add to your planner. I cut all of my pages off camera. I didn't think you needed to watch me cut the white border off all the pages. I did use my deckled edge trimmer for cutting the white border off the page. I picked the page I want to be my first page, and I will add a cluster to it with the month and a tab for locating the page in my journal. Of course, we always ink those edges. I'm using walnut distress ink for my edges. Glue to the blank page in your journal. I'm using Barely Art Precision Craft Glue. I refilled my art glitter bottle. I do like both glues though. I saw this trick before on YouTube where you use your glue sticks to spread the glue around to the corners. Saves the finger from getting all sticky. Line up your page to the journal and here to the page, making sure it is straight. Glue your next pages. I like to lay out which page I will glue to which page in my journal. I rearranged them a couple times trying to figure out which layout is the best, what worked last month, or maybe what didn't work and I want to change this month. I sped this up also because you do you and arrange your pages the way you want to in your journal. I will show how I do a couple of the pages a little differently for some added interest in our journal pages. This page I ripped the corners, so I thought, why not rip the whole page up and add gold between the ripped corners? We did this technique last year in ephemera with Barbara at 49 Dragonflies and Louisa Heinzel. It's called kintsugi, which is a Japanese art form that involves repairing broken pottery with gold, silver, or platinum. The word translates to join with gold. So let's give it a try with this ripped page. I strategically ripped the page in several places. I left the big flower in the center hole, hoping that it would be my focal point on the finished page. I put it back together on my desk. I had left the straight edge on the ripped pieces so I would know how to put the puzzle back together. First I embossed each edge with my embossing ink fine line gold embossing powder. Some pieces are small, and be careful you don't burn your fingers while using the heat gun. Again, I will speed this up as I do each piece with the embossing powder. Now to assemble the embossed pieces back onto the blank journal page and getting them to all fit together. The white was too stark under the pieces, so I added some gold pan pastels to the white page. That still isn't what I want, and later we changed this to something more spectacular. I'm new to using pan pastels and need to practice with this medium a bit more, as it will rub off if you don't use a fixative over it. Glue the pieces to your page. I lift a corner, add glue, and after I have them all arranged, one piece at a time, making sure they all fit nicely. Let this dry with a piece of wax paper between the sheets. On my step counter page and habit tracker, I don't really have a need for an envelope or pocket for a to-do list, so I'm going to cut this out and use it as a pocket on another page of my journal. I want to cut it off, leaving a little bit of the envelope, so I can glue this to my blank journal pages, and then glue the tracker pages over the top of it. I leave about a ½ inch for gluing to the blank page. Save your cut envelope. We'll be decorating it and using it later in the video. I had to cut down on the envelope flap pieces that are still left on the journal to be able to separate the pieces and glue one side to one of the pages and the other to the other page. It lays nicely in between the pages glued down. Now to glue the habit tracker and the step counter to the pages right over the envelope I cut out and glued the flaps down. This is a nice thing about junk journaling. If you don't want something where it is, cut it out and move it. I put a piece of wax paper or butcher paper between the pages while they dry, so that helps them not stick to each other. Pages are all glued in, and we are ready to add our dates and weekly nomenclature to the monthly calendar page. This comes free with my no date planner pages. Cut out the weekly nomenclature and glue to the top of the calendar. Don't forget to ink those edges. Next month, instead of adding the month to the top of the calendar, I will save it for a tab I make for the first page. Too late this month, but something to think about if you would like to do it if you're crafting along with me. I date the monthly and go and add the day weekly pages. I will speed this up again on the redundant steps. I looked at this kintsugi page and decided to add some gold leafing to the cracks. I go through all of my gold leafing, and I don't just have gold. I have bronze and silver and a mixture, but no plain gold. So I go with the bag of leftover pieces. I have that, and it's a mixture of colors. Wow, some of this stuff is so pretty. Why don't I use it more often? I have the glue, and I find a paintbrush to add the glue to the cracks, and then add the leafing. I just dab some of the glue into the cracks. You need to let this dry or it gets sticky before you put the foil on. Put a piece of paper behind the page so if the leafing gets moving around, it stays sort of in one place. It moves with the littlest amount of breathing or air current. I found my tweezers and add the leafing to the cracks. I put it on thick and make sure I get it on all of the glued areas. It sticks to your fingers and it's kind of a mess, but the end result is well worth the extra time it took to put the little pieces onto the cracks. After you get all of the leafing into the cracks, make sure it's good and dry before you take a dry, soft bristle brush to the leafing and gently wipe off any excess foil. I have these brushes that I used to use when I was making stained glass pieces for the flux when soldering the joints together. It's a firm but not too firm bristle that works great for rubbing off the excess leafing. Tap the excess off onto your page you put between the pages and put any extra back into your page of pieces of leafing. I really love this page. We're ready to add some paper to the other half of the envelope. I measured how much I needed to cut and find a piece of paper from the background section to add to the envelope. Go ahead and take the glue strip from the envelope and seal the flap down. We'll be cutting the end after we get this covered. Cover the envelope with glue and wrap the piece of paper all the way around the envelope, both sides, making sure you get the glue right up to the edge of your envelope. Fold the paper over and adhere to the back side of the envelope. My piece is long enough to wrap up and around, but I chose to cut it off, making sure you don't cut the envelope or everything will fall out when we use it. Now you can cut the end of the envelope for a pocket that will hold a tag going sideways in our journals. You just want to cut maybe 1/8 of an inch off the end of the envelope, just enough to open the end. I used my 1.5 inch circle to cut a portion of a circle out so you can see the tag and it's easy to pull it in and out of the pocket. Let's cover the other half of the envelope that we cut out of our journal earlier. I rip up some pieces of background paper and glue these in a collage onto the envelope. I leave the clear see-through window open and collage around the opening. You could rip your pieces smaller, but I made mine large and covered the envelope with just a few pieces. I save one of the pieces that has flowers on it to go inside the envelope so you can see through the window. The top of the envelope where I had cut it out of the journal needs a border so it matches the bottom of the window. So I just glue another piece across the top of the envelope. It makes the window smaller, but it looks more unified in my eyes. The piece I glued on is larger, so I flip it over and rip off any excess with my ruler for the straight edge. Let's put a piece in the envelope so you can see it through the window. There will be a tag in it, but when you pull the tag out, it will still look pretty. If you aren't using digitals from a kit for this project, you could use old book pages, music sheets, or old magazines. Your journal, your choice, just have fun. Line the flowers up so you can see them. The piece inside the envelope doesn't have to be full size. It can just be a leftover piece. You won't see the other part of the envelope. Cut off any excess sticking out over the top of the envelope. Make sure all the corners are adhered with glue and aren't pulling up. And don't forget to ink those edges. I actually use some of my gold wax around the edges of this envelope with my finger tool. Rub it in around the edges of the envelope on all sides and edges. I want to put this on the page after my habit tracker and step counter, as I flip to this several times to add my steps daily and mark my habit tracker. I use a small bullnose clamp. It's not gold, but it's an antique gold. I will be making a dangle for it, but this video is getting long, so it will be in the next video during the month as we work on our planner all month long. The first week in my planner has the first day starting on Saturday for February, so I have all of this blank weekly calendar page. I decided to cover it with another piece of the extra background pages. I added a little extra to make a flip-up flap of the page, and will add some lined paper that I can add some personal notes under the journal flip-up page. Rip this to fit the space and glued it down. It fits perfectly in the border of the weekly planner page. one more thing to this gorgeous page. I have these gold glitter glue in 3 different colors, but one is gold, so let's use it for some jeweled dots in the center of our kintsugi flower. You could use stickles or glitter gel, gold fingernail polish, dots. What do you have in gold? I randomly add dots to the center of the flower. I have my tags from January out to figure out what more I had planned for this month and mark off what I've done and what more I want to do. The cover page needs a cluster with the month on it. Let's work on that. My mother was going through her scarves and getting rid of some of them. I thought this one was the right color for my journal and cut it up to use in my journal. I show more of this when we make the beads for the dangle. The scarf is really hard to rip and it frays really bad, which is a lovely addition to my journal page. I rip a piece to use on the page and find my freebie with the months and a scroll pattern to fussy cut and add to the cluster. I want to use a tab for this front page so I can flip to it easily each month. I cut a couple out of the leftover pieces with my die cutting machine, which is in my Connex box full of all of my belongings while we're living in the tiny house. When I went to cut these pieces along with 4 tags, it's 23 degrees out today and so cold. I only did a couple die cuts and my hands got too cold. So when I mess up one of these tabs, I wasn't going back out there to cut another. I layered pieces and make a cluster for the front page. Add a little more embossing powder and fine line gold to the edge of the scroll pattern. February, and heat emboss it. I use my pliers to hold the little piece with so I wouldn't burn my fingers while I'm heating the piece. Tab I want to use and inked around the edges and glued all pieces together to cluster. For gluing the material down, I use fabric fusion glue. I find where I had put the tab for January and put the tab for February a little higher so they aren't in the same place. I want them to be staggered down my journal. Glue the tab down first, then layer the material over the edge of the page so it will show sticking out over the tab. My piece of material is too big, so I cut it a little smaller to fit the cluster a bit better. Fray the edges and let the frayed piece be this cluster. Glue the February fussy cut out an embossed piece over the frayed material. When I embossed the word February, the F did. Some small pieces to add to the cluster. I have tickets and tags that I collect and layer pieces onto them into a cluster. I cut the ticket to fit my space, add a few more small pieces, and start gluing from top to bottom place where I had arranged this. Next time I will add the month to this side of the tab instead of the top of the page. The scroll with February needs something. The fussy cut piece is white and it doesn't match as well as I would like. So I added another piece of material over the top and cut out another February nomenclature on the freebie sheet and glued it over the first layer. Add a piece of wax paper and let this dry. I printed the digital kit on 28-pound paper, so it's not strong enough for a tag. I glued the tags to another piece of cardstock and reinforced the tags. Let those dry flat and find some more pieces to make a few more clusters. I had cut some small tags also, so I can add some layers with the tags, reinforcing all of the tags with cardstock. After they all dried, I cut the tags on the cardstock and inked around the edges. Put a tab on the top of this tag, adding a hole to the tab to add some of the material from the scarf to the top of the tab. The plain hole didn't look good, so I wanted to add a brad to finish off the hole. The brad pulled through because the tab wasn't thick enough to hold. So at this point, I should have went back outside to the Conex box where my die cutting machine, but it's just two paper and added it up and fit another brad onto the tab with added thickness and the brad staying in place. It fixed the problem so I could live with it and didn't have to freeze my hands again. I have typed up quotes in Word in different fonts and sizes, so I picked 4 different quotes from this and cut them out to add to my 4 tags I will be making. Be sure to ink the edges of all the I cut in thirds and layer the quote onto a scrap on my desk. The scrap is material, so I used my fabric fusion glue. Cut the 3 pieces out and layered them onto my tag. This tag still needs something, so I fold one of the small tags around the bottom of the tag and add a number and another small tag in the tiny pocket I created with the small tag. To the small tag, I added another piece of stapled it onto the hole of the top of the tag. Glue the folded tag to the bottom edge of the large tag on the back side and 2 sides of the front. You can use it as a tuck spot for the small tag. Wipe off any excess glue. Add glue to the number and adhere the number to the front of the half tuck spot tag. Braid the edges of the material for adding interest on the tag. Next tag, we will add a piece of the material along with some gold thread and layer a quote onto it. All 4 of these tags are going to be an easy addition to our journals. I cut this quote in half and adhered it to the tag, making sure to ink the edges of the quotes. Wipe off it laid down was the hardest part of this tag. It wants to go all over besides where I want it to go. We use this on him. For our next tag, I this perforated paper that will fit the small tag. This one will have a brad on the top, so the little tag will hinge on the big tag. I don't want some gold brads and put a hole through both the small and large tag at the top. I want a piece of material to be at the top of the tag, so I removed the brad and added a piece of the material to the top and put the brad back into the 2 tags. I did add a piece of paper tape to the back of the prongs so they wouldn't get caught onto anything in my journal. For our 4th tag, I make a small cluster and adhere it to the bottom left edge of the tag. I have this number 5 that makes the teal color in the alcohol ink flowers perfectly, so I used it as a focus. Layered this with the material and a few more pieces from my stash. If I'm gluing paper, I use the Barely glue. Fray the edges of the pieces sticking out over the edge of the tag I had layered onto the cluster. Have a great day.